resign yourself, Charlie Charming. I have moved into the neighborhood.
When Arthur and Endora get together, sparks are sure to fly. Endora decides to move into the neighborhood, causing chaos for Darren and Samantha, especially when nosy neighbor Gladys Kravitz gets involved. Hi, I'm Mark Simpson.
And I'm David Pierce.
I'm Adam Michael James, and welcome to Twitch Talk.
Tonight, we'll be discussing episode number 80, Endora Moves In for a Spell. Now this episode, Ruth Brooks Flippin wrote the teleplay from a story by Robert Riley Crutcher. It was directed by William Asher and produced by William Frug. Along with Paul Lynde as Uncle Arthur and Sandra Gould in her first screen appearance as Gladys Kravitz, additions to the cast are Paul Smith as Floyd, Sid Clute as Noel, and Arthur Adams as the desk sergeant. Now we'll start off with the official Screen Gems episode description. Uncle Arthur pops out of a painting in the Stevens home. Samantha tells him she is trying to stop Endora from encouraging Tabitha to use her witchcraft. Uncle Arthur's remark that Endora is an old crone brings his sister into the action in a fighting mood. A violent argument erupts, and Endora, vowing never to return, leaves. Time passes, and Darren complains about the influence Uncle Arthur is having on Tabitha. When he tells Samantha he'd rather have Endora, his mother-in-law appears. Pointing to a vacant lot, Endora produces a house and announces she is moving in. Uncle Arthur gestures, and the house disappears. Witnessed by nosy neighbor Gladys Kravitz, she calls the police, who sends officers Floyd and Noel to investigate. Uncle Arthur and Endora continue their quarrel, and Samantha, out of patience, insists that they make up. After they leave, Darren realizes the house is still on the supposedly vacant lot. When Samantha makes it vanish, Gladys gets hysterical again, and Noel and Floyd decide the less said about it, the better. Later, while the Stevenses enjoy the peace of being alone, Endora pops into a painting in the hallway, and immediately Uncle Arthur appears in a portrait next to her. Both admit they don't trust each other, but agree to remain in their frames to keep an eye on future happenings. Well, that's what it says. Now here's David to give us a little historical information. David?
Thanks, Mark. Production for Endora Moves In for a Spell was completed on September 2nd, 1966, and then the episode broadcast on October 22nd, 1966. The same week that it broadcast, Agnes Moorehead appeared as a panelist on the new NBC daytime game show Hollywood Squares, and then the following week Paul Lynde joined the cast, and as we all know became a favorite as the center square, which he actually didn't take over until 1968. Take it away, Mike.
Thanks, David. Continuity Man here, off on another continuity adventure. And what I find the most fascinating about Endora Moves In for a Spell is not Arthur and Endora fighting over a sometimes existent house, although that is hilarious, but rather the confirmation that Arthur and Endora are brother and sister. Of course, there was nothing about that or the feuding and jealousy we see here in their first scenes together in Season 2's The Joker is a Card, but still, it's pretty cool to give them this family tie as Endora moves in. However, 3 episodes prior, in Witches and Warlocks Are My Favorite Things, Samantha's family tree got some potential new branches. Clara, Hagatha, and Enchantra are all Samantha's aunts, meaning they have to be sisters of one of Samantha's parents. Check it, Endora Clara and Enchantra all have red or reddish hair, and Maurice was way too formal with Hagatha and Clara to be their brother. So process of elimination suggests that Clara, Enchantra, and Hagatha are all Endora's sisters, and according to this episode, they're Arthur's sisters too. The only iffy part comes when Endora says she was an only child before Arthur was born. If you go by the family tree that I've watered, it would seem that Clara was the one who had the honor of being an only child, not Endora. And just for fun, this would all also mean that Arthur has 4 sisters, just like Paul Lynde's other character, Harold had in Driving is the Only Way to Fly. How's that for service? Back to you in the studio, Mark.
Thanks, Mike. Now, after a quick break, we'll bring in the panel and we'll discuss Endora Moves In for a spell. Stay tuned.
Twitch Talk will be back in a moment.
Y'all bored at home? You got nothing to do? The Bewitched History Book will come to your rescue. With over 700 pages of info and fun, you won't want to put it down until the day is done, huh? If you're a true Bewitched fan, then all we can say is get online and order yours today.
And now, back to Twitch Talk.
All right, well, welcome back to Twitch Talk, and we have our panel with us now. So we're going to start off with some introductions. I'll start. I'm Mark Simpson. I'm in Tacoma, Washington. I organize the Bewitched Fan Fare events, and I run the Facebook pages and groups. And we're planning for our Bewitched Fan Fare 2020 in 2021 from May 6th through the 8th. We've had to reschedule a couple of times due to the pandemic, but hopefully we will be able to do it this time. So next we'll start with David Pierce.
Hi, I'm David from Salt Lake City, Utah, and I'm the author of the Bewitched History Book, and I have been a fan of Bewitched ever since I can remember.
All right, and Mike?
Hello, I am Adam Michael James. I live in Stratford, Prince Edward Island in Canada. I am the author of the Bewitched Continuum and I, Samantha, Take This Mortal Darren. And even though the Bewitched Continuum points out continuity, flaws, and good stuff and everything, I love the show. It doesn't matter how much I pick it apart. I still love it.
All right, so now we'll move on to the panel, and let's start with John.
Hi, everyone. I'm John Moffett, and I live in Antioch, California. And I have been a lifelong Bewitched fan ever since I was a small kid. I used to audio record the episodes and then replay them. I even had on cassette a few episodes of Tabitha, which Mark knows how much of a fan I am of that little series that could. So yeah, I'm excited to be a part of this today. Thank you all for letting me join.
Well, we're glad you're here. So let's move on to Anna.
Hi, my name is Anna Bergman. I live in Vallejo, California. I discovered Bewitched as an adult, and I love the sharpness and sophistication of the writing and the connections with the real world, like Khan. And it's so well acted. I feel that it is like a play so far as people being able to act with their whole bodies and just make the characters so vivid and alive.
All right. How about Susan?
Okay, I'm Susan Hauser. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, and I have been a Bewitched fan since I was a little girl, and I remember watching it when it was first run. I think I picked it up maybe in season 3, because that's the one that speaks to me the most. The thing I loved about Bewitched, and I still love, is the continuity. Mike, I know there's some uncontinuity, but discontinuity, but the continuity, the house felt like a real house. It felt like I lived there. I loved it when they referenced things from other episodes, and it just felt so real to me. And I got really going with Bewitched as a fan when I discovered Herbie's book in a bookstore. And I just couldn't believe that there were other people who felt this way about Bewitched enough to even write a book. And then I discovered Harpy's Bazaar online and met all of y'all, and it just, it's been great.
Great. All right. How about Max?
Hey, I'm Max Webb from West Midlands in the United Kingdom. I've been a Bewitched fan since I was about 8, so that's nearly 40 years. Yeah, I just love Bewitched because to me, it's family, it's nostalgia, it's just pure innocence, and I was introduced to it by my mom because it was on Tuesday tea times over here at about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and she said, you need to watch this, because I used to watch it when I was a little girl when it was on Saturday morning, and I just fell in love with it. And I started from about season 4, so season 1, 2, certainly season 1 and 2 I'd never seen until they were released on DVD, I think it's about over 10 years ago now. So yeah, I just love it.
Great. And Justin?
I'm Justin. I'm from Atlanta. I've been a Bewitched fan ever since I can remember. I've always loved sitcoms about some kind of magic. Bewitched has always been my favorite by far. I love the different family members and how Darren and Samantha interact with the family members. I love how Larry and Mrs. Kravitz interact with them. They don't know if he's a witch, but all this funny stuff happens and they don't know what's going on. And I also love the relationship between Darren and Samantha.
All right. And Taylor?
Hi, I'm Taylor. I'm a media historian and I'm a college professor at the University of Georgia in Athens, Georgia. I have watched Bewitched my whole life, and I remember when I was a little kid, we watched it on a little black and white television set. Obviously not in its first run, but I always really appreciated Endora, and I really appreciated Uncle Arthur. So I'm really excited to talk about this episode in particular.
All right. And last but not least, Ross.
Hey, I'm Ross Allison, Tacoma, Washington, also known as the Bewitched artist. I used to do a lot of artwork that Mark would always want me to do. And I've always been a big Bewitched fan since I was a little kid. In fact, my mother used to ground me from watching Bewitched. That was one of her ways to punish me. So little did I know it was already in reruns, but I couldn't miss an episode.
Okay. So again, we're going to talk about Endora Moves In for a spell. And I'm going to ask David to kind of give the panel a brief description of the episode. I've already read the official Screen Gems description, but I'm going to ask David to give us a brief description for the panel.
So this episode begins with Uncle Arthur showing up for his second time, and he wants to know what's Endora been doing to cause havoc, and she pops in and says that he's not going to stay there without her moving into the neighborhood, and she zaps up a home across the street, and the two of them go zapping it back and forth and trying to take control, and finally Samantha lets both of them have it. So that's it in a nutshell.
So let's kind of go through and each one of us just talk a little bit about the episode, what you think of it, and just whatever comes to mind, any bloopers or continuity issues that you noticed or anything like that. So let's start with John. What are your thoughts about the episode?
So it's funny. I sometimes confuse this episode with the Halloween episode where there was a house across the street and then there wasn't a house across the street. So there are some similarities there with this particular episode. But yeah, and I like the kind of how Mrs. Kravitz finally gets a witness to something that she's seen, and then they're like, we're out of here. We don't know nothing.
You know something? I just figured it out. I'm glad this house showed up out of nowhere. If it hadn't, I wouldn't have reported it. You wouldn't have come out and seen it, and nobody would have believed it.
I've got a flash for you.
What?
I still don't believe it. Don't argue. I won't say anything if you won't say anything. About what?
So, how about Anna? What are your thoughts on this episode?
This is one of my very favorite episodes because Endora and Uncle Arthur are my favorite characters, and this is about the two of them going at it. And something I think is interesting is that the plot isn't based on magic. It's based on this brother and sister having an argument. And one of the things I like about Bewitched is that it's a family drama. It's a situational thing. And I think it's like a plays that could have been written in the 30s and 40s, and that it comes out of that tradition. And so the acting is just so good. I think everything Uncle Arthur says is funny. When he calls Endora Dimples, and the timing is perfect.
I've heard all I care to hear.
Well, you're gonna hear a lot more, Dimples.
Dimples?
And then it's one of the few times when Samantha really puts her foot down and sticks up for herself and her family. And I love that. And whether they are witches or warlocks or not, your relatives can still be a real pain. So I just love that.
Great. How about you, Susan? What are your thoughts?
This episode bugs me because that house is not across the street, you know, and I know that neighborhood well. And even before I got to visit there, you could see that lot. You knew it just didn't fit in the neighborhood, and so I guess that's a continuity issue that just bugged me. One thing I love about this episode is that there are a lot of references to other things in literature and music. They reference Annie, get your gun, when Uncle Arthur says, anything you can zap, I can zap better. That comes from that. They talk about Little Boy Blue, the Wicked Witch of the West. Let's see, what else? Madame Lafarge, the murderess, I think it's the 19th century. So I love that, those references and those things that go on that are part of the writing, which was always so stellar.
Anything Mother Hubbard can zap, I can zap better.
So, little boy blue, if it's hostilities you want, it's hostilities you'll get.
How about you, Max?
I love this episode too. It's one of my favorites. I haven't seen it as much as some of the others, but I just love it because obviously Endora and Uncle Arthur are in there. There's the magic between the house switching, but I also like the fact that we get an idea of what Endora's house might look like, even though we don't go inside it. We see the outside of it. Because I always think we should have seen where she lived. It would have been quite nice to have seen that, rather than her just popping in to Samantha's house. Also, as Anna said about the acting and the dramatic side of this episode, I love the scene where Samantha just stands up to her mother and her uncle, and you almost forget that it's a comedy, and that you're seeing another side to Liz and her credit to her acting.
Now, I'll admit I'm a little bit torn when we get into these witches' world versus mortal world battles. I can see both sides, and I try to take both sides. I try very hard to be fair, but sometimes you can try so hard to be fair that you end up being nothing. As
Well, in
far
my
as I'm
opinion,
concerned,
I just...
From now on, I am taking sides. I am showing favoritism, plenty of it. All of it in Darren and Tabitha's direction, right where it belongs.
But yeah, it's got everything, this episode. It's just brilliant.
All right, so why don't we move on to Justin?
I love this episode. I love Uncle Arthur. I wish he were in more episodes. He's probably my favorite, character that's not in every episode because I love his practical jokes. If I were a warlock, I would do stuff like that. Him saying, "I've been trained." Or when he shook Darren's hand, the hand extends. And when I was a kid, pretending that I had magical powers, I would think of stuff like that I would do.
Hiya, fella. Glad to see you. Put her there.
Your Uncle
And one of the contradictions in this show is the question, can you undo other people's spells? Some episodes you can, some episodes you can't. And Dora zaps at the house, then Uncle Arthur makes it disappear. But he can undo that. But when Endora did all that stuff to Darren, Samantha would say, "I can't undo that. That's Endora's spell."
They seem to kind of go back and forth with that throughout the series. They could undo somebody else's spell when it was convenient.
I don't think the writers cared all that much about continuity.
All right, thanks, Justin. Now, how about you, Taylor?
This episode has one of my favorite quotes in the whole series, and this when Endora says, "If it's hostilities you want, it's hostilities you'll get." It's just so juicy and campy, and that's the thing I love about this episode. I mean, this episode taught me how to be the fun gay uncle to my nephews, because they go for it. They're not just gonna have Uncle Arthur walk little Tabitha down the street. Oh no, they're gonna put that buggy on a red carpet and send it flying down the sidewalk. So I love this episode for that. I also love it because when I was a little kid and I was watching this show, I had two sisters who were both a pain in the ass. So I could definitely relate to Arthur's struggle. And it was fun to see a familial magic relationship that has its own sets of strife.
And how about you, Ross?
I don't know. Maybe I didn't get the humor of it all. Maybe I'm just sick. Oh, you guys don't get that one. That's what Darren says after he plays all his tricks on him. He says, maybe I'm just sick.
I just don't happen to think that a hot foot made with real lightning is funny. I don't know why. Maybe I'm sick.
But anyways, no, it's a great classic. I enjoyed the show. The one thing is I just don't understand why none of the other neighbors noticed a house popping in and out. Why is it always Gladys Kravitz?
That's the fun of it, I guess. David, what do you have to say?
Well, I have to agree with Ross. Like, why didn't the neighbors, other neighbors, ever see it? Because that's like a huge thing. And then I also wanted to mention, I just remembered it. My favorite line from this comes from Arthur when Endora pops in, and he says, "Endora, speak of the devil, how are you?" And then I wanted to mention a couple bloopers too. The biggest one is when Arthur returns from cakewalking and he hands Tabitha to Samantha, and in that scene Tabitha is played by Diane and she's in a yellow coat, and he hands her to Samantha, and when it cuts back to her putting Tabitha in the crib or whatever it's called, playpen, it's now Erin, and she doesn't have any coat, and there was absolutely no time for that coat to have gone unless Samantha twitched it, which we would have seen because it's a television show.
Endora, well, we certainly have missed you. Long time no see. And we thought you said you were leaving for good.
Any resemblance between George Washington and myself is purely coincidental.
And so finally, Mike, what are your thoughts? I know you already stated some things in your opening intro, but what else have you got to say?
The man has come to his senses at last. He finally appreciates the real me. I do have some continuity stuff, of course. I wanted to mention that Sandra Gold, yes, this being her first episode, it was very interesting to me the way they eased her in to the episode. Like, you didn't have her with Abner right away. They were just over the phone, but they weren't actually in a scene together. And I thought that was kind of an interesting way to kind of, again, ease the audience into having a new Gladys.
All right, Abner. Now tell me I'm crazy. Now tell me I'm making things up. There it is, a full-grown house that grew up out of nowhere. See for yourself.
Gladys, how can I see for myself? I'm in the doctor's office. I got news for you. You're checking over the wrong person.
And she's certainly a lot more proactive in this episode, telling the cops that, this is a very strange neighborhood. But it's interesting that she says that because she's only ever had issues with the Stevens house, so I don't know how she suddenly expanded that to the whole neighborhood, but what are you going to do?
Actually, this is a very strange neighborhood, but I can't get anybody to believe it. Not even my husband.
One thing I wanted to mention that kind of annoys me, doesn't really annoy me, but I think they could have done a little bit better with that red carpet, because as he's pushing her down the side, you can see the wheels. You can see the wheels turning. They could have put something over the side of at least the wheels that were facing the camera, so that you couldn't see the wheels, and to make it more look like maybe it was kind of like floating down the sidewalk. Okay, so we're going to take a little break, and we'll be right back.
Twitch Talk will be back in a moment.
Hi everybody, I'm Adam Michael James. If you're here with us on Twitch Talk, it's because you love Bewitched. Well, so do I. That's why I wrote this. The Bewitched Continuum, the ultimate linear guide to the classic TV series. It compares and contrasts all 254 episodes, exploring the continuity of the show. And the magic continues with season overviews, incredible photos, and a section I call Within the Continuum. If you've ever wondered how many times Endora called Darren Durwood, or who came down with which witchy illness, you'll find it here. The Bewitched Continuum and Imagine series finale, I, Samantha, Take This Mortal Darren. Available in print and ebook on Amazon.
And now, back to Twitch Talk.
Now here on Twitch Talk, we're bringing you something very, very special. Taylor Miller is an assistant professor at the University of Georgia, specializing in entertainment and media studies. His work has been featured in the Huffington Post, an article to which David and I contributed regarding the impact Bewitched has had on the LGBTQ community. And Taylor is currently working on a journal article that uses this episode, Endora Moves In for a Spell, as its foundation. Ever wonder how the show changes in reruns from cable network to cable network? Taylor's here to tell us.
Well, thank you for having me. My primary research interest as an academic is television syndication, and I like to keep my eyes out for unusual things. In reruns, Bewitched is pretty unusual. So a few years ago when I was writing my dissertation, I discovered that Bewitched was being played on two very different cable channels. On the one hand was Logo TV, a cable channel targeting LGBTQ viewers, and it started airing in a marathon block there called Witch Please. But at the same time, it enjoyed the warm queer embrace of Logo's drag superstars. FamilyNet, a cable channel formerly owned by Jerry Falwell, aired the show immediately before a lineup of anti-gay Christian programming. So how could a show about magic and mortals appeal to such different audiences? Well, that's the subject of a forthcoming journal article I wrote called Darren Number 2, using this episode as my case study. Endora Moves In for a Spell. In researching that article, I gathered up a few different versions of the episode. I have FamilyNet and Logo's version, and I was able to compare them with Mark's original network print. Now, a lot of people say television changes drastically in reruns, so I wanted to put that theory to the test with these 3 versions of the episode and share some key differences. So let's start with runtimes. Originally, there's 24 minutes and 56 seconds of scripted Bewitched content in the original network print. That left room for 5 minutes and 7 seconds of commercials, both immediately before and after the episode, as well as commercial time between the segments. When we get to FamilyNet, that runtime has already dropped down to 21 minutes and 15 seconds of total scripted content. And that makes room for 8 minutes and 17 seconds of commercial time on FamilyNet. But most dramatically of all, when the show is aired on Logo TV, a Viacom-owned cable channel that also owns TV Land, Nickelodeon, Nick at Night, etc., it's now dropped down to 19 minutes, 32 seconds of content, making room for 10 full minutes and 37 seconds of commercial time in a 30-minute episode. So, if you've ever asked the question, does this show really change in reruns? The answer is, yeah, quite a bit. What changes? One full scene is dropped from both rerun versions of this episode. That's the final segment that establishes that Tabitha, like Samantha and Endora before her, will probably live for centuries. And both versions of this 1966 episode also eliminate, but still credit, the only part played by an African-American actor in this episode, Arthur Adams, as the police desk sergeant that Gladys Kravitz calls. Unfortunately, that happens a lot during this time period. There's very little Black representation on television in the 1960s, and when there was, it tended to be, especially on networks, in these very small roles. To make even more room than FamilyNet, however, Logo also makes a couple other changes. First, it eliminates the closing credits and stacks new ones that it created below the tag of the episode, the final scene of the episode. It also, interestingly enough, speeds up the entire playback of the episode by 4.3%. So if everyone sounds a little bit more like a chipmunk, you understand why. Those 2 moves made room for approximately 4 more commercials and an LGBTQ-themed promotional spot on the channel. Both Logo and FamilyNet also completely changed the opening credits and the theme song from the original run. Originally, Bewitched had 2 single marquee sponsors, Chevrolet and the Quaker Oats Company, and each would alternate back and forth which company sponsored which episode. In the animated credits, when Quaker was featured, like in this episode, the logo replaced the circular moon in the skyline. The familiar skillet with a cloud of smoke that burns is swapped for a teapot of steam. Quaker didn't want it to look like their products were burning. These are just some examples of some things that change when an episode moves from being a 25-minute endeavor to being a 19-minute experience on a cable channel. And they're fun to look for what's cut, what's not cut, and maybe why. Thank you so much for having me.
Did you know that Season 6 episode, Samantha's Curious Cravings, was originally an idea for Season 2? The episode was called Dr. Quibble's Cure, and producers wanted Paul Lynde to play the part of wacky Dr. Quibble. In the episode, pregnant Samantha's cravings cause whatever she's hungry for to magically appear. The episode ended up being shelved due to plot issues by executive producer Harry Ackerman. Paul Lynde would of course go on to play Samantha's Uncle Arthur, with his first appearance as that character being in Season 2 episode The Joker is a Card. Dr. Quibble's Cure would go on to be dusted off and rewritten by Fred Freeman and Lawrence J. Cohen for Season 6 as Samantha's Curious Cravings, with the now established character of Dr. Bombay, played by Bernard Fox, stepping in. Gee, all this talk about food is giving me a craving for some of that chocolate cake. Uh-oh. All right, well, welcome back. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go through, we're going to go to each member of the panel, and they're going to give their own little review of the episode, and then we're going to rate it from 1 to 4 stars, 1 being the worst, 4 being the best, and then we will go back and we will calculate the overall rating for the episode. So let's start with David.
So I do like the episode. However, on a scale of 1 to 4, I only give it 2.5 stars because, like I said earlier, everybody is mad at everybody, and I don't like all the fighting and the angriness going on. But the house popping in and out is way cool.
All right, and Mike.
Overall, this is a fun episode, and I love the fact that it explores the relationship between Endora and her brother Arthur. I am going to have to give it, I'll say 3. I was going to go 2.5, but we'll say 3.
All right. How about you, John?
Literally, that's exactly what I was going to say, Mike, was that it's a 3 for me. The dynamic between Arthur and Endora was fantastic. I just thought that this overall was about a 3 for me.
All right. How about you, Anna?
For me, it is not even a question. This episode is a 4 because of the dynamic between Endora and Uncle Arthur. The dialogue and the tone and the timing, I think, is perfect. So 4.
All right. And Susan?
As I said, the house gives me several issues. It bugs me as to where it was and which way they're looking out the window as to where it should be. The dialogue is pretty snappy and fun, and I like how Samantha, we see this other side to Samantha. But I'm going to give it a 2.5.
So, all right, how about you, Max?
I have to agree with Anna. I think it's an amazing episode. I think you see a brilliant relationship between Uncle Arthur and Endora, and you get to know more about it. I don't actually like Darren in this episode because I think he's quite fickle, and I don't like the way he switches sides with Endora and Uncle Arthur when it suits him. But I'm going to give it a 4 because I just think it's brilliant.
All right, and Justin.
Because Uncle Arthur is my favorite non-regular character, and in other episodes you see that the character of Uncle Arthur developed, and you see the character of Endora developed. But in this episode, you really see them interact and how they clash. I love that dialogue and the interaction, so I give it 4 stars.
All right, and Taylor.
Well, the episode means a lot to me for that reason. I'm kinder than I might normally be. The moment between Uncle Arthur and Endora where they keep popping the house back and forth and back and forth, one too many times feels a little tedious. But I love the episode. I love those characters. I love that it's so campy. So I'm going to give it 3.5.
And finally, Ross.
Well, being that it's an Endora episode, I'm a huge fan of Endora. I'm going to have to give this one a 3.
Any reason why it's only 3?
Well, I've seen some better episodes.
All right, so for me, and some of the issues that we talked about, like the painting, the wheels showing on the red carpet, I think the episode is great. The acting is awesome, and I love like everybody else has said, I love the interaction between Endora and Arthur. I crack up every time he calls her Dimples. that just cracks me up. So it's a great episode, but I'm going to give it 3.5 stars. So when we average this out, we come up with three stars. So this episode overall is 3 stars from our panel. Yay!
Yeah, I agree.
All right. So let's take another quick break, and we'll be right back.
Getting together for a few good laughs, the kick of adventure, a quiet moment to share a song. That's part of the fun of life. We've got a lot to share. Let's get together. Let's get together. We've got a lot to share. We've got a lot to share.
And now, back to Twitch Talk.
All right, well, welcome back to Twitch Talk, and I want to thank our panel for joining us tonight. I want to thank John, Anna, Susan, Max, Justin, Taylor, and Ross, and my co-hosts, Mike and David. Do you have anything you want to say before we close?
David?
Just I hope everybody stays safe in this crazy world, and I hope it doesn't get too hot wherever you are, and bewitched forever.
And I just want to say thank you everyone for tuning in, and make sure to come back for the next episode of Twitch Talk.
Yeah, we'll be back probably in a couple of weeks with our next episode. And in the meantime, best Twitches!